I believe any version of the Bible can really lead someone to Christ and tell them a lot of truth. But if you truly want to be a Bible student, I mean, if you really want to hold a preserved Word of God, I mean, if you ever come to the position of defending the Bible, you're going to have to get a King James. Because most of the versions I'm aware of have some real serious errors and contradictions built in, like the American Standard Version or the NIV. But I'm not aware of any in the King James. Perhaps a lot of people don't want to believe the Bible because they have too much pride to admit they've been wrong. Pride is the first thing on God's hate list. Not that he hates that kind of stuff, it's just that he's sad about this stuff, and it's the worst thing that can ever distort our relationship with him. Pride is the first thing on God's hate list. It's the thing that can make us think, oh, I'm smart, I can figure it out for ourselves. You know, the fact about living a Christian life is all about the humility and the humbleness that you give yourself, that comes into you once you receive Christ into your life, okay? There's no contradictions in the Bible. There is contradictions in the Book of Mormon. One Book of Mormon says you have to have more than one spouse to be married, and one book says if you have more than one spouse, you're damned. I mean, which is it? There could be a lot of contradictions in many cults and satanic religions around the world. I would have to say that the fact that there are a lot of satanic and occultic religions around the world is actually proof that the Bible is right. I mean, what other religion has a counterpart to it? Seriously, Satanism, the fact that Satanism exists, that could actually be the proof exactly that biblical Christianity is actually true. And no, Christianity is not about religion, it's about relationship, okay? And I dare say it's even about reality. Religion, upon specific aversion, is actually believing something with faith without evidence, okay? There's lots of evidence for biblical Christianity, especially a Judeo-Christian worldview. Especially a lot of people might not want to believe the Bible because, you know, there might be Jews out there, and they might have a whole misunderstanding based upon Christianity. They thought that, oh, the Christians were who persecuted them during World War II. Hitler was a liar, okay? His actions weren't even Christian, and there was no evidence that he really was a Christian. It was all propaganda. See, it was Hitler's eugenics movement that was fueled by Darwinian evolution that caused him to want to eradicate the Jews. True Christians are best friends to Jews. I mean, even Muhammad knew that. He even wrote that in the Quran, in some surah, I forget which. But Christians love Jews. I've got a huge soft spot for Jews, and I'm a huge supporter of Israel, and I'm against any bias that comes against Israel and trying to say that Israel is the enemy or an apartheid state. That is all just bull, okay? Mind my language, but it's just bull. Again, people will say that the Bible is not for smart people. It has no advancement in science whatsoever. I'll say again, most branches of science were started by biblical creationists, but I'm just quoting a certain hero of mine, Kent Hovind. But the fact is, the biblical creation is a whole lot sensical. Evolution is rather just confusing. It's actually really depressing to the spirit and leads to a lot of this social ills, especially school violence and school shootings. But that's another long story. The fact is, if people really acknowledge and understand that there is a creator out there, then there are laws that exist. Okay, I've said this clear in another video, and the fact is, you know, science draws people closer to God, as Louis Pasteur said. Science appears twice in the Bible, and both times it's given a positive perspective. Nebuchadnezzar took for himself young men who were cunning in knowledge and understanding science. And Paul said to Timothy, Timothy, you be careful of science that is falsely so called. Evolution is not part of science, and that's the point I try to make. It has nothing to do with science as much as beer has nothing to do with sports. And there are going to be people who try to confuse the definition of evolution. They're thinking of natural selection, the small changes within the kinds, which is variation within the kinds. That's not evolution, that's variation. That's simply natural selection. By the way, creation is thought of natural selection first. Little changes within animals that are limited and only stay there does not prove molecules to man evolution. That's never been observed, and we don't even see that in the fossil record. By the way, the fossil record might be clams all the way up to birds. That's based upon a flood. Perhaps clams are at the bottom because when a flood happens, clams are already at the bottom, and birds are at the top of the geologic column because birds are the last to outrun a flood. And they're like humans and bigger animals are at the top, and usually the sea animals at the bottom. It's all based upon a flood. It's all sort of based upon a flood. It makes a whole lot of sense. And why is it that evolution is still around when a lot of the evidence has been put forth that actually shows that evolution is wrong? It's because evolution is a religion. It's a carefully protected state religion. People don't want to believe that there's a God because, as a quote from this one guy who I forget says that, I guess the reason why we left at the origin of species was the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. Ah, now we're getting to the truth. We don't want God telling us what to do. People want to think that God doesn't exist and we can do whatever we want. Well, that's chaotic right there. That's not going to put a whole generation of smart people who will be able to advance in science or whatever. That's just going to bring a lot of social ills. In fact, just trust me on this. I've seen the outcome. I've studied the reasons. I've studied the history. People try to say, oh, it's because the Bible has superstitious things talking about dragons and giants and unicorns. Well, understand, biblical interpretation back then was talking about certain different things that in our modern 21st century classification system have really confused to this day. A unicorn we think of today as a horse with a horn, but perhaps the unicorn was talking about a certain dinosaur. There's many different names for certain dinosaurs that actually had just one horn coming out of their heads. And what about the giants? The Bible says there were giants on the earth in those days, but talking about pre-flood conditions, people grew bigger, the animals were bigger, and plants were bigger. There's lots of evidence in the world that giants roamed the earth long ago. We actually descended from giants, not primitives. Now, the fact is, I'm 6'4", 193 centimeters. Now, that's nothing compared to the giants. It's interesting, if you're over 6 feet tall, you're taller than 90% of the world. Now, it's true that in the last 100 years, there's been an increase in about 6 inches in average height, only in industrialized countries, and that's because of increased nutrition, food supply, better sanitation, nothing to do with evolution. But the fact is, giant axe heads have been found, Stonehenge, many different latte stones in Guam have been found. The fact that it shows that giants were actually the ones that built these things. Giant people, even their bones have been found, which have been maybe misidentified, saying, oh, this is a giant sloth or a prehistoric animal. There's no such thing as prehistoric, okay? There are things that are pre-flood, but that's not prehistoric. You say dragons? Well, the dragons were the dinosaurs. Simple as that. There's been many testimonies that people have gone into the Congo or the Amazon and saying that dinosaurs are still alive there. Dinosaurs are not dead. Even pterodactyls are reported to still be alive in Africa. They're not that big, just about a 4-foot wingspan, and they're just baffled by the fact that schools in first world countries like England and America teach that they lived millions of years ago. I'm sorry, millions of years do not exist. Millions of years are spoken of so easily. It rolls off the tongue. But when we actually observe what these unimaginable eons of time actually talk about, we find they don't match what we observe. And that's the reality of it. That's the truth. And just deal with it, whether you like it or not. The fact why dinosaurs are so scarce right now is because people have been killing them off over hundreds of years. And that's why there are thousands of legends of people killing off dragons. People would try to say they don't want to believe the Bible because the Christians, they're horrible, they're ruthless, they're so maniacal. I'm sorry, but you've been watching too many Hollywood movies and too much news bias, okay? True Christians are never shown on TV, and if we are shown, we're the serial killer. They are often trying to make fun of Christians in Hollywood movies. That's just unbelievably horrible. I rather call Hollywood Hollyweird right now. They're just being so antisocial and just rather so weird and trying to treat us all like we're all idiots. Just try turning off that TV and focusing on reality, okay? True Christians are people who are really into the fruits of the Spirit, which are all 9: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It's all about love, acceptance, and forgiveness, okay? People will try to say, oh, the Bible's filled with superstitious promises and unfulfilled promises. Well, people were laughing for a while when there was prophecy in the Bible talking about Israel coming back. And Israel did come back in 1948. And people were beginning to see and understand, wow, the Bible's prophecy is amazing. And I'm a big guy on end-time prophecy. But I feel like, especially creation evangelism, is really important because if you really want to be showing people the true origins and really wanting to show the message of Jesus Christ to them, they're going to call it Christianese if they don't understand what it is. See, it's like starting in the middle of a book. It's like starting in the middle of a movie. If people won't understand who Jesus Christ was or what sin is unless you talk about the beginning, Genesis. If you don't understand, I'll bring you back to the beginning. Then people will be able to understand. And end-time prophecy, that's really important stuff. And surely there's a lot of stuff going in the world right now. Nation rising against nation, and then, the Jesus Christ coming back again pretty soon. But end-time prophecy is not going to help you battle abortion or gay marriage, but Genesis will. And I'm not one of those anti-gay or anti-abortion. I'm pro-life, okay? I'm pro-marriage, okay? I'm not like one of those bigots or intolerant people out there. Well, Jesus was intolerant of sin, but he loved people. I'm intolerant of sin, but I love people, okay? I love gays, But seriously, I don't like gay marriage. It's like a freight train. The gay freight train is trying to collide at the people at this one place, just with signs saying preserve marriage, preserve what is right. You know, it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And seriously, abortion. Why is it that people treat their babies like animals, but they treat animals like they're babies? Okay, I just don't like the indifference right there. I just don't like the whole fallacy of why people would do such a thing like that. And lastly, but most importantly, I'm a guy from Japan, okay? I'm not American one bit. My dad is from England and my mom is from Japan. But that's not all. I'm a whole mix of English and French and Swiss and Japanese and way out there someplace. Don't try to stereotype people as those who believe the Bible are from Southerners and just play banjos and hillbillies and that kind of stuff. Well, some of them may be like that, but that's not what the stereotype is. Don't try to stereotype anything. That's rather really filled with fallacies and logical fallacies, and that's no argument whatsoever, okay? And just the fact is, God is a loving God. He does not want to come down on you hard with any sort of, you know, rage or lightning or smiting, that kind of stuff, just simply you don't obey his rules. That's all nonsense. The rules and commandments in the Bible were made for our good. It's because God cares about us. He's a personal God, and there is evidence that he does exist, and angels exist, and demons do exist. I mean, try to watch this amazing testimony right here by a guy named Nigelium. He says he procrastinated making that video for far too long. It's really amazing. I really recommend you check that out. And that's all I guess I have to say for this video. So peace out, keep thinking, Jesus bless you, and TDFN, ta-da for now.